Good morning, fellow Plexers. This video is going to talk about the difference between hardware and software transcoding and whether you really need hardware transcoding or hardware accelerated transcoding, which takes place very efficiently on an Intel CPU or an NVIDIA GPU. Modern video cards or modern Intel processors. There is some unsupported hardware acceleration on AMD CPUs, but none of that's supported by Plex officially. So I just set this test server up. I have a test server running on Unraid. It has an i5 9500 CPU in it, which contains the UHD Graphics 630 iGPU, and the family is Coffee Lake. So what I've done is I've disabled hardware accelerated transcoding in this server, and I have the HTPC client app loaded with a couple test Buck Bunny videos and 2 Blu-ray discs that I've ripped myself. So let's start with this. This is an 8K version of this little public domain file. Because the stream was already in a transcode the last time it started up in a transcode now. And because it doesn't have the little HW in parentheses, you know it's a software transcode. The audio is always a software transcode on the CPU itself. It's never on the GPU or iGPU. But if I turn on hardware acceleration, that would be on the GPU or iGPU. So let's let the video play for a second. Scroll down. You'll see that the bandwidth shot up to over 80% right away on just one transcode. So let's watch this as I change it back to a direct stream, and then I'll do the 4K version, and we'll watch the CPU usage. Now you see the CPU took a little bit to drop, but it did drop down to nothing. So let's go to the 4K version, start that up direct stream, and then add that as a transcoded stream off the CPU itself. And the CPU usage stays low, and we'll bring it down to 4 megabits per second 720p. And notice the delay in starting up. CPU starting to climb. The climb was delayed because I didn't realize I had it paused. Okay, let's take that out of the transcoded state. And the CPU drops. So let's exit out of the stream, and we'll go into our settings. I have to be on the right server. And I will find transcoder. Let me make this full screen. Now this test Unraid install on this 9th gen Intel CPU has now 32 gigs of memory in it. It had 16 when I first started it, and I've rerun the container to use half of that 32 gigs of RAM memory as transcoder temporary storage for the hardware acceleration. that saves your wear and tear on your SSD drives that may be running your containers. So we will check this box and that box, and you'll see that the hardware device is this UHD Graphics 630. I'll save changes, get back to the same state. Let's start up the 8K stream again. So you see it's direct playing. Now watch how fast it starts up as a transcoded stream when there's hardware acceleration. And note that the CPU usage stays low. Hardware accelerated transcoding is so efficient on the iGPU or the GPU that it basically uses no resources at all. It's not going to make your system run faster. It's not going to spin the fans up. It's not going to cause your system to be hotter. It's very efficient. And of course we see the HW to signify that it's a hardware transcode. And again, the audio, which gets transcoded along with the video, this is on the CPU itself. And even though this is being transcoded, this does not cause a rise in the CPU usage. So let's do the 8K or the 4K stream now. Okay, we have our transcode through hardware. We do have a spike in the CPU usage, but let's see when it drops. Well, this is unexpected, the high CPU usage. Let's take it on a transcode and pop it back in after a bit. Alright, we have the CPU usage that dropped back off. Oh, I think I have an explanation. Let's put this back into, yeah, I don't need to put it back into the non-transcoded state. My CPU does not support AV1. So that is what's going on. The iGPU, let's say, does not support AV1. So even though it doesn't support AV1, the CPU is working less than it would if it was transcoding this through software. I was having a brain freeze for a second to explain why the CPU usage was high. But let's do this test with the beginning of one of the movies I ripped myself. I'll use this because it has a long musical introduction. And you'll see how high the bit rate is. Let's take it down to the same level. Not only did it start up instantly, but the CPU usage is under 20%. So we'll keep this movie in mind, and we'll turn off Hardware Accelerated Transcoding and then finish up. So back to the settings, transcoder. I'll uncheck these two boxes, save changes. Now, it was still in the transcoded state, so now it's taking longer to start up. But you see that the IGP, or the CPU through a software transcode, is doing a fine job at transcoding this. The only real difference is that the iGPU or the GPU with a Plex pass to unlock them can do a lot more than what the CPU can do. You'll see my usage is over 80%. One, maybe two streams, if you're lucky to get two streams. Kyle's brand new NAS, and that's what I'm making the video for, has a XEON processor. He might get 2 or 3 software transcoded streams out of it. And this is what we have to remember. Transcoding, whether it's through the efficiency of the iGPU or a GPU with a Plex pass, or brute force through the CPU, is a fail-safe feature. No one at home is going to be watching their stream, their 4K stream that they've carefully ripped, and force it into a lower resolution to have a worse quality. We want to watch our media in the best quality that we can. And you'll see this uses no CPU to do that. So Kyle really has no issues unless he wants to share with a lot of people, and they have devices that will force a transcode. But generally, through my experience, it's going to force an audio transcode, which really doesn't matter much. The video being transcoded really just comes in if somebody's got a device that's really incompatible. And you have to be careful of the way your media is encoded. H.264 is wildly compatible across all devices. Almost all modern devices can decode H.265 video, which is HEVC. AV1's on the scene, and there's also going to be H.266 coming out. We will all need new client devices eventually to fully support those mediums, those protocols, but our servers don't have to change to do that. We're just serving media out. It's just sending the media out, and then if it needs to be converted on the client app side, then our server takes over. And the hardware acceleration is just very efficient on the video side, and it can do a ton of them compared to just a few with the fastest, best processor you can find. So that's about it. I just wanted to talk about the differences, and sometimes we overbuild our Plex server so it can do anything down the road when we don't really have to. Now I moved my own Plex server. Let's pull this up to a little NUC running Unraid. It's an 11th gen NUC. Here's the model number. Here's the processor model. It's a mobile processor. And someplace I've rearranged my screen. Here's the iGPU in it. It's a little Plex rocket ship. It's faster than this 9th gen system I've been testing out today. But I really did this to see if I could do it. I didn't really have a need to, because with all my friends and family on my server, only old Roku devices or some newer Roku devices without a sound system on them, and Samsung TVs with a built-in Plex app being used almost always force a transcoded audio stream. Generally, the video goes through fine. My media is a mixture of 1080p and some 720p episodes, and most of my users are not owners of 4K TVs. We forget as Plex server owners that if we're into all this, we're more likely to have a high-end 65 or 75 inch nice OLED TV at home, maybe a projector. Well, the average person may still be dealing with a 40-inch TV and they may think that's big. They may have a 32-inch TV as their main TV that they got from Costco for a couple $100 and it runs the Roku interface. All they want to do is see the media, and they're not the high-end users in a lot of cases. So sometimes the iGPU is just so the Plex server owner can watch his own high-end 4K media any place remotely while he's traveling. Sometimes it's to share with a good buddy because he's got the bandwidth, but nobody's really pumping out 20 4K streams that are all of a high bitrate nature. Nobody's doing that. But you might pump out 20 streams to your friends and family if it's 1080p and the bitrate's 5 megabits per second and you have a gig connection. So just kind of throwing this all out there. Kyle, you definitely just need to get going with your installation of your new NAS. Follow the guides from NAS Compares. That should do you right. And feel free to hit me up if you'd like to talk about file structure, or I can just talk about it now. Now, what Robbie is going to recommend to you is that you have a separate folder for every type of Plex library. Great advice. I take it to the next level. So what he's going to do is have you create one network share for your media. On this server, it's marked Media PD. And then I have a folder for every type of library folder, but I'm using them as a sort folder and not an actual library folder. So Robbie would have you put your movie files in the movie folder, TV shows in the TV folder. I put the actual movie libraries into that movie library sort folder because eventually you may want a separate library for kids or a separate library for documentaries or 4K. You'd put a DVR movie library here. On the TV side, regular stuff goes in the main folder, kids stuff goes in this, and if you're a fan of anime, you can have that sorted out. And what that ends up doing in the client app, let me back onto the stream. Let's make this full screen. So now I've got the regular movie library, I've got a 4K library, and I have a TV show library. And let's bring the server back in. So if I go to manage libraries, I can add a library. Let's pick a TV show library. I'll name it Kids, TV shows - Kids. Next, we're going to go look for that folder structure. Because this install of Plex is in a Docker container, this is the alias to my shared folder. When I click into it, I see my sort folders. I'll go into the TV library sort folder, pick the kids library folder. There's only one show in here, just public domain episodes. Click add. I name everything from the TVDB, so I change this one setting for episode ordering. Add the library, and it starts scanning. So now, if I exit out of my HTPC client app on the computer and enter back in, now I've got this new library that's already pinned with that content in it. So it's a great way to separate out your content. And now you see it picked up that it's a new library there. All right, so that'll do it for this video. That's the difference between hardware and software transcoding. And you really can't beat the hardware acceleration if you need it. Again, you may not need it. I like the idea that it's there no matter what, but it costs money. I probably have $600 invested in my NUC. Bought it on sale for $438 or something. Got two different 500 gigabyte SSDs, one NVMe, one SATA. I bought the unit bare, so I grabbed 16 gigabytes of memory. I bought a high-end flash drive to use as the Unraid boot disk. I threw another flash drive in to fool Unraid into thinking that was the one required storage drive that never gets used. And I'm off to the races with a little rocket ship for a Plex server that points back to my Synology NAS. It was a pure vanity project. I didn't have to do it. My friends and family were still served very well off my original Plex server, which it's been changed to a test server right here on that Synology NAS. That's where my media is. And if I look at the transcoder settings, it's a 9th gen Celeron processor with this UHD Graphics 600 iGPU unit. It really was good enough. A transcoded stream didn't start up as fast as it does on a newer system. But again, hardly anybody ever transcoded the video portion of the container file on my system because of my gig internet. Bandwidth was never an issue, and my media is all H.264 or H.265 encoded, and most client devices handle that without a problem. Okay, so happy Plexing, and hit me up with any questions.